Hey everyone, Dr. Diane Kaiser here. Welcome to the Cleanse Like Night podcast, Warrior Wednesday, Doc Talk with Dr. Diane Kaiser. And I'm going to bring on Coach Carrington today, which she works in our ministry, and she's a extremely intelligent woman who is also helping me with the mission of helping you guys understand why you're so sick. And it really comes down to being toxic. Many of you have heard me talk about ad nauseum toxins and the fact that they're the single greatest reason why we are so sick, which is why today's theme is called Be Your Own Best Doctor, Detox Doctor, that is. And we're going to teach you how to learn and to read your advanced toxic burden labs, how to clear toxic load and use peptides that actually work. Because what we're seeing is a lot of you are very excited about peptides and bioregulators, which is awesome. So are we. But we want to get to the root cause reason why some of you are reporting that peptides didn't help you with a certain condition, or maybe you still have a lot of issues with your immune system, or you might hear that somebody got cancer, but they were taking peptides. Well, what's the deal? So peptides only work as well as you're working for your body to remove the root cause reason why your body isn't manufacturing or receiving the signals from the 8,000 plus peptides that you make every single day. Because peptides are not exogenous. You're making them on a regular basis. You make GLPs in the gut. And in fact, today with Carrington, we'll talk more about what she's seeing on lab testing with our patients as far as patterns. Because when we bring these episodes to you guys, it's because we're seeing patterns. And these are things you're not going to see in headline news. These are not things that your doctor is talking about. These are things that your medical doctor is either confused by, will gaslight you on, or has never been trained in, or has no at all training and testing to explore the root cause reasons why you get sick. And a drug is not going to fix you. It's only going to suppress you. So really, I woke up about 2 weeks ago and the sign was clear on what we need to talk about this year. And it said zero immunity. It's like God brought me to this message, zero immunity. That is the end game for the way that you're being treated, the way that insurance companies, the algorithms, the financial metrics, the training the doctors are receiving. It's all about zero immunity. The reason why everybody has diseases like crazy, cancer is increasing in odds, and I have a slide for that. People are battling obesity, fatigue, memory issues, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. We're seeing all of these things, and people are coming to us at the end stage. And we really want to catch you guys before you get to this point, because really, disease is like 15 years brewing in your body before you get to the point of a diagnosis. It could be even longer. So there are signs that your body's trying to tell you and sell signal through peptides, mechanisms in the body, that there's something wrong, but the way you're taught to address it is symptom suppression, and that's never, ever going to fix anything. And this episode today, I want to be very clear. This is not about fear-based, and it's not opinion. The reason why so many people right now are not getting better with chemotherapy and radiation is because they work by killing rapidly dividing cells, and that's the mechanism. And immune cells, your gut lining, bone marrow, and repair tissues, they divide rapidly. So immune destruction isn't a side effect. It's a part of how these treatments work. And 98.6% of cancer treatments do not work. So we're not going to go, deep down the rabbit hole today about just cancer. We're going to talk about the reasons why people are getting it. It's not genetic. It's not just something that you get when you get old or when you're stressed. Why this matters for the bigger picture is that when we accept immune collapse as an acceptable trade-off in extreme cases like cancer, we also have to acknowledge that many modern medicines that are used today, they use the same logic, just more slowly. So drugs that you're getting prescribed, even without cancer, maybe it's skin issues, long-term steroids, biologics, antihistamines, antibiotics, and even Accutane, they suppress immune system signaling, they damage the gut, they alter your microbiome, and they shrink immune intelligence over time. So the result isn't no immune system, but it is why I call this zero immunity, an immune system that's present but confused, reactive, and unable to regulate itself. So that's why people are not getting one diagnosis anymore. They get food sensitivities, mast cell activation syndrome, autoimmunity, infections, brain fog, anxiety, and chronic inflammation, because the root cause was never resolved. It was silenced. So I want to get started. I want to bring on Carrington because toxins are the single greatest reason we're sick. So let's bring on Carrington and we'll get started.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Diane.
Yes. I always love doing these shows with you because, as you all might know, I'm the founder of the Chi Ministry, and Carrington is our badass Chi clinician that is working with a lot of our patients and is really, really intelligent as it pertains to connecting a lot of dots with lab testing. We run urine tests, which we look for 3 different types of toxins in your urine. We're going to talk about today, the 3 main ones. Carrington, you want to share a little bit about that, what you're seeing?
Yeah, what I am shocked by is the amount of toxins. Meaning, I think that as clinicians, we kind of might narrow down on one, like we talk about glyphosate, or we talk about mercury, or we talk about mold, and then people go through detoxes for those specific things, and then they're still not better, or their breast implant is causing all this stuff, or they kind of have a known toxin that they're treating and then not getting better. And it's because we have so much burden in our environment and so much burden filling up our toxic cups that it isn't just one thing. It is multitude of things. And I have been reading these labs daily. I've had the privilege of working with really high volume practices and clinicians, and I've been reading these daily for 12 years now. And so I've been able to see patterns in these toxin panels over the years. And I will tell you, I've never seen this much toxic burden. And these are with patients that are health seeking. Most of them, I work in functional medicine, integrative doctors. It's like people that are trying to avoid non-organic foods, and they're filtering their water, and they're doing things. And so for their numbers to be so high, I don't even know what it would be for the average American. And so the burden is extremely high, and it is not just one toxin. It is across the board. We are seeing it in multiple categories of pesticides, insecticides, xylenes. And with mold, it's not just environmental mold. There is rampant amount of food-based mycotoxins, and it is crazy the amount that are, because the body's really, really resilient. I think that this is something that actually kind of hurts us sometimes, is how much the body can handle. And this is why we kind of just keep trucking along until that cancer diagnosis hits, because the body is so adapting to this crazy toxic environment all the time. And but the downside of that is that it is adapting sometimes in maladaptive ways, things that you don't want it to be doing. And it is, we're not catching disease states when we have the opportunity to turn it around, and sometimes before it's too late.
Yeah, I always like to say the body remembers what medicine tries to forget. And, when immune intelligence is sacrificed with all of these poisons and pathogens and programming that a drug's going to fix it, then symptoms are destined to multiply. Yeah. So what we're on here all the time talking about toxic burden, and until it hits home to you and you see your own labs and you see, oh, okay, this is why my body's urinating out. Then the next question is, well, where am I being exposed to these things? Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things that we're seeing right now, I know people talk about heavy metals. If you guys are following me on social media, you may have seen the little mashup that I did where they talked about people who measured their urine prior to chemtrail exposure, which is mostly environmental toxins and aluminum and mercury and a lot of heavy metals. It's also mold. Dane Wigington, he's the geoengineeringwatch.org. He's the global whistleblower on chemtrails and the damage that they're causing to our body and the flora and the fauna and all the animals and the marine life. And I'm a scuba diver and I can see all of this. If we look at nature, we can see we're not separate from nature, although the programming wants us to believe that we are, by blocking the sun and wearing sunblock. And like the first thing that you tell our patients, because they have such dysfunctional immune system and adrenal and thyroid and hormonal dysfunction, they're exhausted in the morning, they can't fall asleep, and they're not getting cell signaling, but they're also not getting exposure to the sun. So you tell them, go look at the sun first thing in the morning. And those are just those are just like standard things that we used to do. And it's so basic, but then those are the things that people finally are open to hearing once they see their labs and they can truly understand how toxic our world has become, especially in America, even though we use 50% of the world's medications, but we're getting sicker by the day, not getting better. Mm-hmm. And so these toxins, the metals, the environmental toxins, but especially the mold. And this is what Dane Wigington confirmed when I did an interview with him, that what he's seeing in the forests with as much damage as we're seeing. I brought the labs and the patterns to him a few years ago. And I said, I've never seen mold and candida and fungal overgrowth and pathogenic overgrowth and H. pylori to the degree that I have in the last couple of years. And that was just after COVID. And he said, Diane, the numbers that you're seeing in your lab patterns for your patients is exactly the proportions that I'm seeing with the deforestation because of the mold and the fungal overgrowth and the aluminum that causes more wildfires. We're breathing the same stuff that these plants are, and it's destroying everything. So we have to wake up to realize that we are in a state of detox or die. And I don't say that to fearmonger, like I said earlier. I'm saying this because the reason why you're so sick and why you might have, and I want to talk about this next with you, Carrington, mast cell activation syndrome or chronic inflammatory response syndrome. These are the things that people and clinicians like us have been talking about for years, but now all of a sudden it's this epidemic. Oh, I got diagnosed with histamine overload. Now I know the problem. Why is that not the problem, Carrington? And what are we seeing with our patients? And how have you noticed the patterns of mast cell activation syndrome increasing? Like, what exactly is it?
So when you see mast cell activation, it's because the cell is non-functioning. That is not a normal response of the cell. And so when you're getting a diagnosis of mast cell activation, it is a symptom of a complete cellular breakdown of the circadian rhythm of the cell, but also the mitochondrial function and just the electrical charge of the terrain of the cell is malfunctioning. And there are reasons for that. There is a destruction of the membrane from toxins that pierce holes through the membrane and degrade it. And then there is a complete collapse of the electrical chain. So when you are getting this mast cell activation, it's from toxins that have penetrated into the mitochondria and caused that collapse. And an overreaction of protection from the cell is to dump a bunch of histamine. And so when people are saying, oh, I have mast cell activation, all I hear is that you have mitochondrial damage from an excessive amount of toxic burden. And so the mast cell is the symptom. It is not the cause. The cause is a overburden of toxins on that cell and a destruction of the function of that cell. And so if all you do is try to break down and degrade the histamine that is being released from the mast cell, you are, I mean, I guess this is what allopathic medicine does. All you are doing is just treating that symptom instead of going to what is the cause of the mast cell activation. Why are your cells doing that? Why is there so much histamine? And so if you are young, like you're in your 30s and you start getting tons of like chronic sinus infections and you have a skin issue with a rash that doesn't go away, and every time you eat certain foods you start to get allergic reactions or histamine kind of reactions, and so as you start doing an elimination diet and eliminating those foods, and then you start having a lot of acid reflux and a lot of bloating, and around your cycle right before your period you bloat so much and you start experiencing all these things, and you go on Instagram and you do all these things, you're like, oh my gosh, histamine is my issue. Mm-hmm. Histamine is not your issue. Histamine is the body's reaction to this complete collapse of the cell function, which is happening from this toxic overload. And there are some toxins that are that I'm seeing most often, and I'm going to say it's mold. I know people want to be like, oh, it's mold again. Mm-hmm. It's not mold, but it's because it's so rampant and it's everywhere, and I'm seeing it on everybody's labs. I can maybe think of one lab in the last 6 months where someone didn't have toxic mold, and I'm reading labs every day.
And it was not this way before. So this is why when we get into the slides today, and you guys stayed at the end because this is where we're going to give you guys an invitation. And we've done this a couple of times, but this is different this year. It's really the most important thing to become your own best doctor. And what we mean by that is especially be an environmental health detective to find out where you're being poisoned. And, to Carrington's point, we're finding mold in everybody, and it could come from food, it could come from your environment, it could come from a lot of different places, the chemtrails. We'll get into the slides on that, but it leads to mast cell activation syndrome, to have that much in your body, because mast cell activation syndrome, it looks like immune excess, and exactly what Carrington was describing, where it feels like you have all these food sensitivities and you're exhausted and brain fog and belly bloat, and you can't sleep at the same time you're exhausted, and you have memory loss, or you have brain related issues. Your mood changes significantly. People think, oh, maybe it's just my hormones, or I'm just getting older, or what was it yesterday that really made me angry, or maybe it's my boss, or what is this, right? A lot of times it's mold. So what happens inside the body, it looks like your immune is overreactive, and even doctors might say that you have autoimmune disease and your immune system is overreacting, but really at some point it was, and we can see this in labs, what status is it overreacting or is it underreacting? But really internally, when you get to this point with this many symptoms and diagnoses, it's actually autoimmune and immune collapse, and your immune system that's compensating, because for such a long time, you guys have been given, all of us have been programmed to take antihistamines and mast cell stabilizers and steroids, which are terrible. They turn off your immune system, and they also destroy your GLP production. And then you wonder why you can't lose weight, because they mess with your cortisol rhythms. And also immunosuppressants like prednisone. We're still seeing a lot of natural doctors prescribing prednisone, which all these things do is shut down signaling. And over time, that disables proper immune intelligence, and it suppresses pathogen clearance like parasites. And you wonder why you're on parasite cleanses forever, because your immune system can't keep up with all of it. So we need to strengthen your immune system and not allow toxins to accumulate, because that's what ends up happening. So we like to look at this from like a multidimensional approach, so that the body can adapt eventually, by not just keeping mast cells in high alert, which creates all these symptoms and skin inflammation and skin infections, because the danger never leaves. And that's why we really need to remove the danger, which is that toxic burden in your environment and in your body, and do it in the right order. Because if your mast cells are just on high alert, it's not immunity, that's survival mode. And so many people are stuck in survival mode, and they're like, oh, it's my adrenals, I'm stuck in fight or flight. I was told I have adrenal, stage 3 adrenal fatigue. And that's something that Carrington and I learned like almost 20 years ago, but it's really old school, and it's not even a diagnosis, it's a symptom. And the missing link is toxic burden, because if somebody has mast cell activation syndrome or high histamines, you can assume, just like Carrington said, there's the presence of one or more of the things that we test for, which is the mold mycotoxins, the heavy metals, or the environmental toxins. So we always like to not guess, but to test. And so what would you see, like Carrington, on some of these people who are coming in and saying, oh, I'm glad I have this diagnosis, or what you're seeing on social media and what's so viral these days, no pun intended. When somebody has mast cell activation syndrome, what are some of the diagnoses that you've seen them be put into a box with?
I see like chronic fatigue is a big kind of overarching thing, which I almost feel like used to be like pseudoscience, or they would call it pseudoscience. They'd be like, the allopathic doctors would be like, that's not a real diagnosis, that's not a real thing. And then all of a sudden now that's like their favorite diagnosis, right? And so I would say that I will also see diagnosis of Lyme, or just chronic fatigue, the MCAS, the histamine. I think one of the common things I see, even when people are seeing a lot of naturopathic doctors, is just food sensitivities. Like they think their entire problem is their food sensitivities. And so they're just on this like never ending chase for elimination diets to keep retesting and eliminating the food sensitivities. And really it is actually mast cell activation caused by a ton of toxins. And the problem with mold in particular is not only that it's immunosuppressive and destroys the outer membrane of the cell, but it also just really wreaks havoc on the gut. And so all of your immune activation inside the mucosal lining of the gut, it all gets compromised. And that severe leaky gut that is then caused by that, and this isn't just mold, pesticides do this, metals do this, but they destroy the gut lining, and you have kind of an army of white blood cells underneath that layer, that muscle layer of the gut lining, the tight junctions, and they're there to protect your blood and your organs and prevent, any kind of septic state of infection. But it's really none of their business what's going on in the gut. They should not be seeing that. And so when you have all these toxins that are damaging that gut lining and causing those tight junctions to either separate or tear and the mucosal lining to be gone, now all of those proteins and things are getting through, and your white blood cells, your macrophages, your eosinophils, all of that in the blood are all now building antibodies to everything they're seeing and reacting to everything. And so we don't need them seeing that. It's none of their business. we need to close that back up, and we need to build back immunity in the mucosal layer and in the gut, so that those immune cells can fight off parasites and infections and viruses, and we stop getting all this overreaction from food. And so we have kind of a series of layers of protection that starts to get compromised. So you have the mucosal layer and gut lining that gets compromised. You have the cell membrane that get compromised. You have the epithelial lining of your arteries and cells that get compromised. And then later, and I think at worst, is the blood-brain barrier starts to get compromised. Mm-hmm. So we have these like really intelligently designed blocks and walls and protection that these toxins absolutely rip right through and destroy and cause all this dysfunction in the body.
Yeah. And to your point with, if somebody has leaky gut, which we're seeing in an epidemic proportion at this point, if somebody has leaky gut, then the next stage is the leaky brain. And then people are wondering why all of a sudden there's so many brain-related diseases and neurodegeneration and neurodysfunction. And, when I think about mast cell activation syndrome, I look to, like you said, histamine intolerance and then food sensitivities, which are far more common than food allergies. And they're not even the same tests. And don't go to your doctor and ask for a food sensitivity test. They don't really understand any of that. And we don't even test for that first, because the food sensitivities are not the root cause issue. No. Just like Carrington said, we've had patients come in and they're down to 5 foods. Mm-hmm. And they have been, like one of our patients, Amber Lynn, she had seen over 10 doctors. She had spent close to $100,000 and she was down to 5 foods, but nobody addressed the mast cell activation syndrome that she had, which resulted in, food sensitivities, which is histamine intolerance. And so you can't fix the gut without addressing the toxins, and you can't get rid of any of these diseases without addressing a system that's on overdrive, especially your immune system, the mast cells, like Ehlers-Danlos, that and hypermobility spectrum disorders. I have a little bit of that. I know Carrington and I have talked about this before.
Riddled with that, yes.
Yes, it's so common right now. So people are like, "Oh, my tendon ruptured, my ligament." It's not just your genetics. Your connective tissues are literally getting attacked by these toxins and pathogens, and then mast cells that just start to spread, and they don't ever stop. It's like firefighters at work 24/7, and they never get a break.
So you almost see the onset of those conditions where people get diagnosed or they start searching for answers is almost always with an acute kind of exposure environmentally. So something triggered that. Yes, there's genetics at play. Yes, there's things going on, but it doesn't come out of nowhere, and usually a lot of stress too. You combo the stress with the environment, and the onset of those kind of symptoms will start.
Absolutely, and it's not just stress. That's what your doctor's going to tell you, right? But sure, it can be emotional stress that triggers it, but there's something that triggers it, and the thing that triggered it could have been part of it, but usually it's an immune system that has been overworking for a long time too, that at some point you just snap. Like we always talk about the cup being half full at one point with toxins, and eventually, or when you're born, at this point, the average babies are born with 260 toxins in their body before they even take their first breath. So it used to be when we were, back in the 1800s, babies were not born with as many toxins as they are now. So let's say you're born with your cup of toxins 25% full, then you get half, and then all of a sudden it's overfilling with toxins. And when we blame whatever that last thing is on being the problem, but it's really been a buildup of a long time. And people, I used to have a lot of these things too, like POTS is very common today. I used to have SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. That's still not a diagnosis. It's a reaction to mast cell activation syndrome coming from toxic burden.
Yeah.
And mold illness, autoimmune conditions, Lyme, like you mentioned. And to your point about genetics, I have MTHFR. I'm double homozygous. People like to say, oh, it's my genetics, and then they think that they're disabled. That's not it. It's the epigenetic factor with the toxins that we're going to talk about today and the toxins that we're testing. And we're going to teach you guys how to test, interpret, and then fix and look in your environment to see where they're coming from, because it's not your genes, it's epigenetics. So your genes are not your destiny. And
really simple, actually, when you look at genes, and like those genes have existed then in your bloodline for thousands of years. And now we're all just right now getting diagnosed with these gene disorders. Like they didn't, a few hundred years ago, they weren't surviving off B vitamins. Like there was something that was helping them adapt to their environment with those genes. And we are not able to adapt. Why? Something's in our environment that is either turning those genes on or making those genes become much more of a challenge that our method. Yes.
The more genetically susceptible you are to having a bit of a challenge to detox, the more you might need to work like with methylated vitamins. And those are the things that we talk about. We're going to be teaching you guys about in this 8-week masterclass that we're going to start in February, is how to read your own labs, how to identify toxins that are the highest priority, and then teach you where to find them in your environment so that you can finally get out of this toxic treadmill and treatment and diagnosis trap, because it's never ending until we get to the root of it, right? So there's, fibromyalgia, anxiety, migraines, estrogen dominance, hormonal issues, and all of the things that most people are struggling with today. We have actually seen before COVID, mast cell activation syndrome was super rare, which basically you guys can take mast cell activation syndrome. You're like, what is this? It's your immune system is overreactive, but exhausted at the same time, and it can't keep up. So we have to get rid of the reason why it has to work so hard. That's why we're talking about it today so much, because mast cell activation syndrome, I'll just keep saying MCAS. It's much easier to say. It used to be like a unicorn. Around 1 in every 150,000 people had it yearly, but now researchers are seeing a sharp rise point post-COVID and post-COVID jab. And then we're seeing this long COVID stuff or unexplained illness or post-viral syndrome, whatever they're calling it. But this is becoming common because we do have 70% of the population at least that got jabbed, that we're told. But it's not just that. It's all the toxins. Mast cell, like you said, they're everywhere. They're all over your body. So whether it's the gut, the brain, the heart, the lungs, when they fire off, it's not just hives or sneezing. You might get insomnia. You might get, even full body shutdowns. And so panic attacks, obsessive thoughts, ADD, ADHD, and the kind of brain fog that you're like, am I getting Alzheimer's? Like, I'm destined to get it because my mom had it, but maybe you're just living in mold before or are now still. So we're going to go through some of the slides before we do. Did you have any follow-up points to that too, Carrington, especially
One thing I want to add that I see a lot of, both in patients and just in family and friends and online, is mood disorders from high histamine. I mean, I think that's rampant. I don't think everyone's just struggling with their mental health because all of a sudden because of the things they say, like the state of the world and our use of electronics, and like all of those are factors, but I think that this is a bigger factor. And I think that high amount of histamine, you'll see one of the symptoms be mood disorders. I mean, histamine becomes a big issue around your cycle. What do you think PMS is related to? It's high histamine. Just inflaming the brain and causing those neurotransmitters to do that. So I just wanted to kind of attack on another really common symptom of the high histamine is like mood disorders, especially if you didn't used to, like, it's not a baseline of your personality type to be kind of highly neurotic, and then all of a sudden you just you have no stress tolerance, your moods are up and down, you cannot maintain your relationships, like you're having to do less at work, like all of these things that are just not normal.
Yeah. and obesity, and people are going after obesity with GLPs, and we're seeing a lot of the swing of that right now. We're seeing the whiplash. So Paula, let's start getting into some of the slides, because I wanted to share some of the actual research, what we're finding with cancer, obesity, and the treatments that people are being prescribed. So, right now we have the first slide that you're going to see here says impending disaster. Scientists warn that cancer deaths are surging worldwide. And this is something that we're seeing in children. It's not just in adults. It's in pets. We've been talking about the statistics for a long time now. We're seeing it in everybody. We're seeing it in plants. This is not just an epidemic of, a lot of people want to say, oh, it's because of the shot. We'll see people in comments saying, oh, because cancer rates are spiking, it's just because of the shot. It's not just because of the shot. It's because of what was contained in the shot. And it's a lot of these same toxins that we're exposed to on a regular basis. So the shot is a representation. I want you to think about it like this. The COVID shots is what I mean. It's a representation of the culmination of a lot of the toxins that we have all been exposed to for a very long time. The heavy metals, the molds, the parasites, the environmental toxins. It's just that this shot was loaded with these things. Yeah. And what we're seeing also is people who have been taking the GLPs, Ozempic especially, people who come off slimming jabs, they just recently did a huge study on this. They've found that they regain weight 4 times faster than dieters. And so what does that tell us? That we need to go back to foundations, and foundational health is addressing a lot of these toxins that are in our food as well. And I have a slide for that we'll get to. So we are looking at all of this, like, how can we make peptides work better for you? And the best way to do that is to detox your body, to detox your environment, and to know which ones are the single greatest, most problem ones for you, because there are 86,000 of them at this point, and we can't keep track of all of them, but we would look for at least 100 of them on lab testing. So Carrington, do you want to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing here? We've already been talking about increasing food, chemical, and environmental sensitivities in the second bullet point here, but a lot of these things, we're seeing this super common in our practice. What are you actually finding that when patients see these problems, they start to become an advocate of their own health, and doing something in their environment finally makes sense to them, where they become a health detective and they want to figure it all out with our help?
Well, I think to your point earlier that this disease state doesn't start overnight. Like when you get cancer, that's at least 10 years before that dysfunction started. And I think the same thing with these symptoms. Like, you're not going to run to your doctor because you've gained 10 pounds this year, or you have some fatigue or brain fog. They're not going to do anything for you. They're going to be like, okay, sorry, your labs are normal. That's fine. And so it's not until those symptoms become outrageous. Like, I have gained 50 pounds, in seemingly overnight. It feels just all of a sudden, and I cannot wake up in the morning, and my attention span is nothing. I can't focus on anything. Short-term memory, I can't remember anything. I have such debilitating fatigue. I've had to say no to all my loved ones and things. I've had to step back from all the things I volunteer at. I don't want to see my friends. I'm staying home. I'm not doing anything because I just don't feel good. Everything I eat makes me feel bad. Run to the bathroom. I'm either constipated for days, or I have to run to the bathroom with diarrhea. Like, all of these things become unmanageable all collectively, and then that's where the patients come see us, because they become absolutely desperate, but they can't make sense of any of it. It's not like one condition, it's multiple things in the body all crashing. And when they come to us, I'm so glad, because that's before that cancer diagnosis. A lot of people aren't as health seeking as them, and they feel all of that, and they go to their doctor, and the doctor says nothing, helps them with nothing, maybe gives them pain meds and antihistamines and weight loss GLP-1s, and tells them that diet and lifestyle can't change any of this, that's just a condition that they have. And so they just have to deal with that, and then they deal with it for years until they get that cancer diagnosis. So yes, that's the trajectory I see.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the overwhelm is real. So, we realize that there's a lot of people who are posting about toxins now, and it feels like my Instagram feed is exclusively that. And
Mhm.
it's like, it's enough for you to shut down because you fear what could happen from it. So we tend to think, okay, well, I'm not going to get sick from it. I'm fine. But if you guys are getting frequent infections, especially we've been seeing a lot of people with urinary tract infections, and they go in, they get macrobid, they get Cipro. These are things with black box warnings, you guys. And I did a podcast on this about a month ago. Cipro ruptured my Achilles tendon. It released had a significant implication in that. And it is the black box warning. It's not just about your Achilles. Your Achilles is a tendon, and so too you have tendons all over your body. So people, even we hear this from Bobby Kennedy talking about 65% of Americans have one goal, and that's just to get out of pain. Well, high histamine load and your immune system deactivation or overreactivation, while also being exhausted, is very painful. When histamines move throughout the body, they impair your nerves, and the signaling of your body's like, there's something wrong down here. So that your body wants you to do something. It'll cause a migraine, a headache, a pain of some kind. It's trying to tell you that something is wrong. And then all you're told is to take a medication. So it's not doing this will help escalate cancer, neurodegeneration, and inflammatory disease. And that's why I keep calling this zero immunity, because if we don't get to the root cause of why we have this dysfunction to begin with, which is all of us at this point, we're all struggling with the poison overgrowth, then zero immunity is the result. And then what? That's when cancer starts to brew, and that's when we start to see more problems. So let's get into the next slide, Paula, and we'll start showing some of these other lab testing. So Paula, Carrington, if you could look at this too. This is our first slide that I want to share about an example of what we see. We do see a lot of patients. We look for 100 or so toxins in your urine, and we ship them to you. No matter where you're in the world, most of the countries, some places like Mexico, we can't ship to. But you don't have to go ask a doctor to order this test. We can help you with this. This is in fact what we're doing in February. So what are we seeing here, Carrington? And is this something that we're commonly seeing in a lot of our patients?
So it's like kind of what I was saying earlier. This is a combination of multiple different toxins. We have that first one, DMTP, that's a pesticide commonly found in non-organic food that is very highly elevated, means they're currently being exposed. Antimony, bismuth, nickel, tungsten, heavy metals, all high. Metals have affinity for your heart and brain. I'm just going to put it bluntly. So like when you start seeing these levels high, we know that there's going to be organ dysfunction, inflammation, things like that. And then look at the level of mold here. We have 3 different aflatoxins. Now, these aflatoxins can be from environment or food-based. That G1 is mostly from, I will say, animal products, animal meats and dairy. And same thing with, I don't see it on here, but an M1 version. So they're sort of like byproducts of the animal. But the B1 is not. The B1 is common in the environment. So this gets a little bit tricky because you almost have to rule out these aflatoxins in your environment first, as well as start making changes to how you the greens you eat, the foods you eat, how you source and buy your animal proteins and fats. The patulin is one I see really commonly, almost on everyone, and it's common on food, but it's also going to be common in like your water bottles and things like that. So we have a full burden here, a full cup of things. And these are just what's high. Like what you're not even seeing on this summary is potentially this patient had multiple ones in the moderate section. So these are very high levels and a full cup that we have to sort of strategically start draining and pulling out of this patient. But this patient does not feel good with this.
Right. And how often are we seeing, because people often tend to think, oh, mold is just if I see black mold on the wall. And so we know it's a lot more than that, right? It's more than just black mold, Stachybotrys. This is maybe some things that if you guys have had mold, you know what Stachybotrys is. What else? Because this is more than just black mold in the environment. what are we seeing on lab tests that is becoming super common? If not, most people have at least some one environmental trigger that is mold. Where are these things? And actually, one of the slides that we have, I have a few different images that we can show these things. Let me get to this first. The next slide. Paul, if we can go to slide number 5 and just fast forward to that. Top 10 facts about mold toxicity. And then I want to get to what this looks like in the home. The top 10 facts about mold toxicity is that it is extremely common, like we talked about. It's often misdiagnosed as Lyme. It suppresses the immune system, like we've been talking about. It activates dormant viral activity. So we see a lot of people who have like Epstein-Barr, and they will claim that to their death. Oh, my Epstein-Barr. It's my Epstein-Barr. It's the problem with everything. Or even HSV, herpes simplex virus, shingles, HPV, yet there's a vaccine for that, right? So I believe that mold is really causing these things to come out, and then you have a breakout and wonder why, and then you end up on some sort of a cyclovir for it. Also toxic exposures like food, air, buildings, breast implants. Docs are on a train, like we talked about this. It's a major block for weight loss. It's a majorly estrogenic. It's a xenoestrogen. So you will not lose weight as long as you have mold present in the body, and GLPs will not fix anything. That's why we're seeing such rebound weight gain. And people are gaining weight 4 times faster than dieters alone because they probably have not addressed this. Yeah. So the mold is such a big problem. Let's look at some of these pictures if we can, Paula. Let's fast forward to slide number 9. I want to talk about this, which is common mold sources in homes, which is like a front-loading washing machine. So let's talk about this part, Carrington. How often are you seeing people just totally clueless about this when we're talking to them as patients?
This is really, really common. Like I think that the manufacturers are finally starting to understand this and trying. I recently bought a machine and was they tried to sell me on a front loading washer and dryer, and I was like, no. And they're like, no. They show me this whole pamphlet on this like anti-mold kind of like technology that the brand new machines are coming out with. So that's good. I guess they're finally acting like it's a real thing when we've been kind of sounding this alarm for years, but people don't even know you're supposed to like leave those doors open. So this is just like extremely common, and it's almost so common. It's kind of like seeing mold in your shower that you're kind of just like, yeah, of course there's a little bit of mold. It's fine. It's whatever. Like you don't think anything of it. Maybe even the water bottle or these different like fuzzies on your food. And we're just so like, we just don't understand that can make us sick. Obviously, we like our idea of mold sickness is like you're living in a horribly, dilapidated home with like mold all growing in a water damaged kind of wall, and you can see it everywhere. And I will tell you, like, of treating mold sick people for years and years and years, it's not because they ever saw it. Maybe they saw a little bit in their washing machine or a little bit in the thing, but like what was making them sick is something they could not see, and is not here. So anything visible that you can see, you definitely want to be immediately treating. And one thing that people don't understand about mold is that it's not the fungus that's really making you sick. It is the mycotoxin chemical layer over it that is released. And that's what makes us most sick. And that cannot be killed with like bleach or something. It's more equivalent to a VOC or a chemical. It needs an enzyme to break it down. So when I talk to a lot of people and mold showed up, and I'm like, okay, we need to find out where mold is. And then the next time I talk to them, they're like, oh yeah, my husband found it, and we just like poured a bunch of bleach on it and we like cleaned it up and it's good now. It's like, no, it's not. It's first of all, you can kill off the fungus and still get sick from the mold, because let's say you had water damage, leak coming through the roof or something, and you took care of it. You fixed the roof, and the fungus was gone, dried up. The colony dried up. It is the chemical layer that's left over that colony that once the air in your home kind of hits it, because we have our homes are pressurized systems. Once that air hits it, it will disperse into tiny pieces and go up into your HVAC, and now it's all through your home. So when people are like, no, I don't have any mold. We had a water leak, 5 years ago, but nothing happened with that, and it's all dried up and the water damage is gone. the risk is still there. And most of the time, these are behind your walls, behind your cabinets, under your sinks, in the
On
little
fibrous
walls
things
of
like
your
couches.
appliances. What's that?
On fibrous things like couches.
Yes, and now the mycotoxins are in your rugs, on your couches, in the dust of your home, in your stuffed animals in your kids' rooms, like on all your clothing. And so you are not, the remediation is far more than just, oh, we found a thing and we put some bleach on it.
Yes, exactly. We see
You
so
did
many
not
people,
kill it.
I'll just throw bleach on it. And the part of what we're going to be teaching you guys in this 8-week masterclass is that if you hire somebody, a housekeeper or a mold expert, a lot of times they do just come in and say, oh, we'll just throw some bleach on it or we'll paint over it. I see this commonly. I was just traveling through Mexico over the holidays, and one of the houses or one of the hotels I stayed in, I looked up and I was like, oh, great, because it underneath the air conditioning unit, there was a long line of black mold. It was like the water that was dripping underneath it. That's another big source. If you could scroll to the next slide, Paula, water is a big source for mold. If people are leaving it and not cleaning it, it becomes damp. And the first thing I noticed when I was sleeping in this hotel was my face got bloated. It felt like my nerves were on fire. I was sneezing. My skin was itching. That is what mast cell activation syndrome looks like. That's what, but mold triggers it. So people think, oh, it's the mold. Yes, it's the mold. Then you get mast cell activation syndrome. And until we can, you can remove the mold all day long, which is also great if you work with, and we're going to teach you guys who to work with. And so it's not so expensive and so overwhelming. If you do have the presence of these toxic molds, you're never going to get better. So we want you to get better. And people think, oh, it's so expensive. It sounds like it's a lot to address. We make it realistic and more affordable for you guys by helping you work with the right people and ending it so you don't have to work with 10 people before you find someone like us who introduces you to people who know what they're doing. Because if you don't fix this, then it'll never go away. And people, it's sometimes not just super visible. This is an example, and this is my parents' house. This was their front load washing machine. This was my parents' water dispenser. So this is what people are doing, using fridge filters, and they change the filters, but they don't clean and they don't look up. They don't look up and they see this white mold. That's not black mold, that's white mold, and that's fungus. And so, we remove the mold from the environment. We'll teach you guys how to do that. We'll look at the mold that's present in your urine that's coming out of your body. We'll teach you guys where it's coming from, how to get rid of it, which molds are the most insidious, and then also look at how to heal from it. Because we can remove the toxin all day long, but your immune system is still struggling, right? So that's what we're going to talk about in the middle of this 8-week course. And this live led, where Carrington and myself and our whole team, we're all going to be on there leading you guys with this live. So you can ask us the questions. You'll have your labs. We'll teach you how to interpret them. And we'll help to find the toxins for you by asking these questions, where you go look for these things and go, oh, I found something. You become your own health detective of environmental medicine so that you can get rid of the root cause of it. And in the middle of it, I'm going to talk about peptides and bioregulators, because that is what actually will help to restore and reignite your immune system again. Because it's not enough just to detox. We have to go back in there and remind the immune system how to fight again, because they get weak, they get overweight, just like you might feel. And we really want to bring that back. So let's look at the next slide. And also, did you have any follow-up to that, Carrington? Because I want to look at foods too, but did you have any follow-up to this part?
I just want to just add on to that, look at your countertop ice makers are really common these days. That would be a total source. Your coffee maker, how often are you cleaning it? I'm not just talking about refilling the water tank and pouring that, but the actual pieces of the coffee maker probably needs to be cleaned a lot more regularly than you think. And so sometimes it's not this big scary mold behind your wall. It's literally your water bottle and your ice machine and your coffee maker. Let's there's some simple things we can do to pay attention to those areas where there's water and areas where this mold can grow. And this is the mold that makes you sick. It's not just a random outdoor mold that we all have, and it means nothing. This mold actually does make you sick and have
It does. It does. And then even having, these porous things in our home, like our beds and pillows and stuffed animals, like Karen was talking about, our shoes. If you're living in a damp environment, people think, oh, I'm just going to put an air filter and everything's fine. Well, if your day-to-day activities are not resolved, then that air filter is just like your immune system. It can only handle so much burden before it gets mast cell activation syndrome too, And that's kind of a fun, it's funny. It's not, your appliances won't get that, but it can only work to a certain degree. It's part of the repair system, but it's the habits. Like if you're wearing, these shoes and you're exercising, and then you put your shoes close to a couch, that's going to grow mold. Mm-hmm. And then it's hard to address that. Sometimes you're going to have to get rid of the couch altogether if you can't see it beforehand. So this also saves you money in the long run, not having to buy new couches and new upholstery and new everything. Let's look at some of these foods, because we only have 10 minutes and about 10 more slides to go. So I want to make sure we're talking a little about mold right now, you guys, because it is the single greatest assault to your immune system. And then you end up with all the things we talked about earlier. Okay. So these are the types of foods that we see, and we'll go through these kind of quickly. So Karen, can you quickly just talk about what are the most problematic that we're seeing? I can say moldy coffee is such a big one. We talk about how to get healthy coffee, but a lot of these other ones are offenders too.
Yeah, I mean, the aflatoxins that are in peanut butter is I'm always like, do you like peanut butter? Because I can see it on your chest. How bad are you? That's a big one. Moldy coffee is probably like off the charts. Really common source.
Starbucks.
If you're eating out, if you're getting coffee at one of the main coffee places like a Starbucks or main thing, you're going to have mold. Like if they're not cleaning their machines, like I'm saying, even their ice machines are full of mold. So it's not just like if you get a certain kind of coffee while you're there, it's everywhere. So
not to mention, hold on a second, not to mention if their ice machines are using the water from the municipalities, that we've talked about this ad nauseum too, about the power of distillation and getting rid of all of the toxins in your water. Whatever utility water that they're using that hasn't been detoxing a lot of these contaminants, you're also drinking that, and the ice and the water that they're using for the coffee.
And then you're having a hot cup with a hot lid, and one of the biggest BPA sources is that hot lid, that hot liquid going through that plastic lid. Is really common. Other than that, I would say I see it most commonly in the simple carbs and the grains. So in corn and like your corn chips at the restaurants, and for all your fumosarians, and then the grains are going to hold it. So all the yeast and things that are just in your spices, even like in your things that you store or buy in bulk. Don't buy in bulk. Don't store things for long periods of time. When you store them in glass containers in your pantry. So as you're looking at this, clean out the pantry of this stuff. But those are the biggest ones I see.
And yes, this is what we're going to teach you guys. This is just a little sample of how we're going to lead you guys on how to know more about what these things are doing, and how the way that you're living and haven't been taught properly, which is okay. Many of us have not. And how to reduce the likelihood of mold growing on these things. Like mushrooms are healthy. Yes, we could all argue that kombucha should be healthy. Grapes should be healthy. Yes, there are more sugar, but a lot of these things could be healthy. Not a lot of these ones that are listed here, but mushrooms, grapes, and kombucha. I thought kombucha was a superfood, right? It's ferments, and it's got a lot of the healthy bacteria that I need. Well, if you react to kombucha, if you react and feel like you can't drink a glass of wine or more, and you are no longer the 21-year-old that can drink 10 glasses of wine, and now you barely, drink one glass, and you're hungover or brain fogged or bloated the next day, or, that could be, and very likely is, a reaction to mold that has been overgrowing your body. It's not just the wine, it's not just the coffee, it's the contaminants in it. So these things didn't used to be unhealthy or toxic alone by themselves. It's the system that we're living in and how we've sprayed, and let's go into heavy metals next, because we're going to talk about heavy metals. We're going to talk a little about environmental toxins. This is just an image you guys could pause. There's different types of molds. We kind of already went over that, but let's look at one more image here of mold, and we'll move straight to the other topic, which is getting into environmental poisons, which are a lot of these things that we're seeing in our food supply. We talked a little bit about BPA, plastic, parabens, phthalates, a lot of things that people don't realize in their personal care products. So the next slide, if we go to that one, is talking about the diagnoses. We talked a little bit about this already, but I want to share a statistic before we get into the last one. According to Mayo Clinic, mold is the primary underlying cause of nearly all chronic sinusitis, persistent inflammation, which is 95% of the root cause of the disease, but not the root cause of disease. It's the reaction to the toxins and the pathogens we're talking about. Your body gets inflamed, right? And it's one of the most prevalent long-term illnesses in America, affecting almost 37 million Americans. So then you go in to take things for your sinuses, or you get a sinus surgery. It's never going to fix the problem unless we really get to the root cause of why you have a lot of these issues. So mold, we kind of went over. Now let's look at environmental toxins: atrazine, BPA, DPP, DDT, ethylparaben, glyphosate. We now know that glyphosate, especially atrazine, forever chemicals, and now we've got like 8 new forever chemicals that have been replacing the ones that were supposed to be going out of circulation, but now there actually been worse ones to replace it. And glyphosate, specifically Roundup, had a big lawsuit, $2 billion lawsuit, and they were supposed to come out with healthier ones, but they came out with like 8 more that were more contaminating our body and more toxic to our body. We don't test for all of them, you guys, and we can't possibly test for 86,000. But my point is that we're seeing atrazine and glyphosate and BPA and pretty much everybody. Carrington, would you like to echo that statement?
Yeah, and actually just reading labs throughout the years, I never ever saw a lab without glyphosate, and now I almost never see one without atrazine. There definitely was a shift to more atrazine. It's not like atrazine wasn't being used prevalently before, but it's being used a lot more. So atrazine was most commonly used in like large grassy areas, so golf courses and large, like my kids playing soccer, and like all the large grassy, if you live on a green belt or something like that, you're going to get exposed to a lot of atrazine. It's used most commonly instead of glyphosate for those large grassy places. All golfers have atrazine poisoning. And so why atrazine is a little bit different from glyphosate, I think glyphosate, I would say, is more carcinogenic. Atrazine is destroying your hormones. Like, you cannot expect to have healthy testosterone levels as a male golfer, if that's your hobby, because your atrazine is going to be destroying that. It's going to really wreak havoc on women that are trying to get pregnant, women that are pregnant, developing children in their hormonal levels, and as well as menopause and women going through menopause. So like, your risks are very high if you live near a golf course. I'll just say that. But glyphosate we get glyphosate everywhere, not just in our environment, but all our genetically modified food. And then they spray the genetically modified food because the genetically modified food still didn't work. So it's like in the DNA of the plant and heavily sprayed on the plant. And even organic produce, they only have to say it's organic if it's only been a couple years since they've sprayed glyphosate and Roundup on it, and Roundup lasts for 8-9 years in the soil. So we are bombarded on all levels with glyphosate, but atrazine is jumping up there. So
yeah, and glyphosate, per Stephanie Seneff and Dr. Zach Bush's work and research, those are 2 superheroes I love listening to talk. I don't like what they have to say, just like you might not like a lot of the things we have to say. We're not bringing good news, but the good news is that you guys can take action and work with us. We'll put the ticker below, dianekaiser.com/patient. To do this with us, you guys get $500 off using the code we'll show you at the very end, for the first 10 to enroll before February 1st, and then enrollment ends on the 5th. But it's important to know these things because it's not just the glyphosate, it's the heavy metals that are in the glyphosate. Yeah. And glyphosate is the single greatest reason for, per Stephanie Seneff's work, leaky gut.
Yeah.
You cannot heal your gut with all of these things that a gut healing doctor has put you on or supported you with, or IBS or IBD or colon cancer. You cannot fix any of those things in the presence of glyphosate in your body and your environment. So if you do choose to never move away from a golf course, you better be taking binders on a regular basis, and focusing on drainage, which is what we're going to teach you guys. So these things are so important to understand. We're not telling you to move or sell your furniture or burn everything. But we are telling you, in order to prevent that, in order for you to feel better and to not be diagnosed with the diseases and be on 2 medications like the average person over 40 in America, we need to do something different. So let's go with the next couple slides before we get into heavy metals. Just is a very important distinction, you guys. Cleaning products in your home are known to be as damaging as smoking 20 cigarettes a day. So this is not just glyphosate nitrogen in your environment, living close to farms or the golf course. It's what are you using to clean your house? Oh, because it's sold at Whole Foods, it must be great because it's Meyer's brand. No, Meyer's brand is sold out, just like Burt's Bees is sold out, just like a Tom's is sold out. A lot of these companies get bought out by larger companies. And the thing that you've been so loyal to because somebody told you to buy it 10 years ago, they change all the time. So our job is to help you guys know what healthy swaps are that are not super expensive. Maybe they're even less expensive by going back to things like just vinegar to clean your house, because this is actually real. We do see people who are house cleaners and hair salon, hairstylists, estheticians. They're breathing in so much lead and so many toxins from these things. Mm-hmm. So this is from a new study. This is a while ago, though, that they found in 2023 on long-term health effects of cleaning products. And so this is, it's as damaging to lungs as a 20-year-old packing or a 20-year-old smoking 20 cigarettes a day. So it's beyond what we even think. It's not just smokers. So, oh, did they die from smoking? Maybe they died from cleaning houses or just even cleaning it once a week. So,
well, what's hard about this is like you're diagnosed with heart disease or COPD or, Alzheimer's, and no one goes to you and goes, oh, it was all those cleaning supplies all those years. But that's actually probably what it was. You know what I mean? So it's like, because we don't have this direct, because it's so many toxins causing so much burden, there's not a direct like, this caused this, then our brain is like, I guess it doesn't exist. It's not real because I can't, it is real. And these things, so you do have to address your environment. It's what you're using every day. It's what you're drinking every day. It's what you're breathing in every day. It's all of that together.
Yes. And it is gaslighting to not bring up the root cause. And they're always going to distract you by not talking about the root cause reason, because they're prescribing you poisons in the medications they're giving you, which is petroleum. And that in and of itself is a carcinogen, an obesogen, and a xenoestrogen. It's petroleum. And that's, anyway, we can go on a tangent, but I won't. So let's finish up by talking about heavy metals. Glyphosate. They've been finding that it's in all major U.S. fast food chains. So you guys can't just go to In-N-Out and say, oh, at least it's a cleaner burger than McDonald's. It's not the lesser of evils anymore. We really do need to start focusing on clarity and cleanliness and purity in the foods that we do consume. And therefore, we teach you guys how to eat at home. Last image here on environmental toxins. It's not just the things we talked about in chemicals, personal care products, and even cosmetics, which we're all going to talk about in 8 weeks with you guys live, 90 minutes every week. We're also going to talk about if there are things like I had back surgery, I have metal implants in my body, but a lot of these things could be other implants, breast implants. It could be even fillers in your face that you're putting in. These are forever. They don't break down. They're called implants. That's why, people don't know this, but they get fillers in their body and they see that MRIs 10 years later, they're still in the same spot. Mesh-related complications. If you have mesh and you can't take it out, then how can we support you? Because those are going to bleed toxins too. So we're not telling you that you're doomed because you have implants, but we're teaching you guys that these are obesogens, xenoestrogens, and carcinogens. And so how to support you with binders and also to know what to do so that your body is actually detoxing these things too. So let's look at heavy metals, which is the last thing. And I've got just a few slides for this. Let's spend just a minute on this one, Carrington, with heavy metals, and then I'll just move through the next few slides to show people what the symptoms look like, and then we'll wrap up.
The metals are really hard. They're hard because they can come from a lot of places. I think that the source that I always try to go to first is your water, because some of these are just naturally occurring in our water. I worked with cardiology patients for 6 years, and I'll tell you, I almost always see barium high in my AFib patients. Like I've worked with hundreds of them, and barium was always high in AFib patients. Barium and mold causes AFib. Yes. In my clinical experience, I was seeing so many patients with it. But where was it coming from? Their water. It was naturally occurring in their area. It's not like they were, doing some super toxic behavior and, doing stuff. And sometimes we can have hobbies, painting, things that are going to expose us a lot more. A lot of times it's coming through our beauty care products and our body care products, but especially makeup and lipsticks and things like that. And it can also be coming from really fast fashion, toxic dyes, and things in our clothing. So it's a little bit hard. And this is why I love the test, because metals, like, unless you kind of like know you have mercury fillings, or you kind of like know, maybe you work in a job where you're working with a lot of metals. Otherwise, you don't know that you have high cadmium, high cesium, like where, and so to get a test done and have it show that it's high and then investigate from there, you might be surprised how much you can eliminate just by eliminating the source that you didn't even know was making you sick. And so otherwise it becomes really hard to avoid all metals, because you might be going on a hunt just with lead and thinking that, oh, if I just don't, if I test everything that might have lead in it and I stay away from all lead, like, okay, but there's a bunch of other metals.
Oh yeah. And I have to point this out too. And while I'm doing this, Paula, can you please move to the next slide, which is, we've got mercury and aluminum toxins. And also the top 10 signs that your body's full of toxic heavy metals. If you look at this list, a lot of this is a lot of the same things we talked about with mast cell activation syndrome and histamine, overload. A lot of these symptoms can overlay each other. And this is what Carrington meant earlier. It's not just one thing. They all start to overlap, and that's why it gets confusing. So this is why we like to put order and priority to the things that are showing up for you in your labs, because metals don't always show up. They're hard to catch. Your body is not eliminating them that well. And a lot of them have an affinity for the brain, and we don't have lab tests for the brain to test toxins. And 65% of your brain is fat, and these metals love your brain and they love fat. So let's look at the next slide and the following, because the final two slides is mercury and aluminum. So 25 plus symptoms of aluminum toxicity. Look at that, even ALS, and what we're seeing, this is in Parkinson's. I mean, when somebody comes to me and says, I have Parkinson's, I know the first couple things I'm going to find is aluminum and glyphosate. And that's what we have found in our Parkinson's patients. And then of course they're, recommended by the doctors to get a brain implant, and then that destroys them. And it costs $150,000 because those things are not covered by insurance. So you're being poisoned, you guys. And aluminum, if you think about also the mouth, silver fillings are not silver. They are half aluminum and half mercury. And it's right next to the brain. And so if you've ever had silver fillings and never detoxed them properly and didn't work with a biological dentist, and they didn't make sure that your mouth was not being protected so that you didn't swallow these things, or they didn't become a part of your brain. I actually did not work with a biological dentist when I had all of my silver fillings removed. I did not know this. So this could be a big issue for you. And then they've also tested people, their urine before and after chemtrail exposure. And the amount of aluminum that went up out of their urine, and they tested it, the aluminum went up between 10 and 100 times more in the presence of chemtrails. And that's what we're seeing as a big problem, as confirmed by Dane Wigington and the research that we're doing behind the scenes. And then mercury too is the next one. We're seeing people who have neurodegeneration. We're seeing that also dentists are, they have the highest suicide rate of any kind of work in America. And we do believe, by and large, because it changes their personality when they have mercury and aluminum in the brain, they're exposed to so much of it, and they're putting this in people's mouths. So just one example of extreme, right? But mercury too is another major issue. And people, when we test people for this, and we're looking at this and we're seeing this, especially in symptomatic assessments, then we ask the first question, have you ever had silver fillings? Yes, but they're not a problem anymore because I don't have them now. If you've never done a proper detox after you had your silver fillings removed, or you still have them in your mouth, we really need to go to the root of that and fix this for good. So again, chemical food sensitivity sounds like mast cell activation syndrome, right? But this is another sign. This is the third toxin we've talked about today that we test for in your urine that causes mast cell activation syndrome, immune system overreaction, then immune system dysfunction, and then all the other diseases that we talked about today. And then the average woman puts on 5 pounds of lead on her lips every year with lipstick. And they don't know that either, but they're buying expensive lipstick, right? So this is an image you guys can stop. And, candida, fungal overgrowth, you're never going to get rid of that, or weight gain, or skin rashes until we address these toxins.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm seeing a lot of fungal overgrowth, which is, you could kind of easily tie that to mold, but I actually don't think it is. I think it's more commonly tied to mercury and aluminum poisoning. It's just and parasites. Like, it's just like the combination of aluminum, mercury, parasites, fungus, overgrowth is like, to me, what's like all of the spectrum children.
Yes, totally. And the parasites harbor all of those things that you just mentioned,
They need it all. Yes.
So you got to kill the parasites and go after the metals inside of them and binders. So all of it's connected, you guys, and our kids are suffering, just like Carrington mentioned, because of it. So, the last thing is that the more of these things that you have in your body, the more sensitive that you are going to be to EMFs, the more you're going to draw in these EMF frequencies. And so all you might feel like or heard that EMFs are bad. Of course they all are, but the more toxic that you are, the more you're drawing these things into your body, and it is a perfect storm. So we work with all of it and what we do. Let's move to the final slide, because this is your guys' invitation. We do this once a year, and we're starting, open enrollment is now. It closes on February 5th, but if you guys want to be one of the first 10 to get $500 off, use code 500CHI, and you go to dianekaiser.com/patient. You'll see more about this. There's 2 options to work with us. If you're the kind of DIY person that really likes to take an active role in where are these toxins coming from, how to understand and decode your labs, it's really important. We give you guys the guides to understand these things. We help you find them in your environment. We help give you the order of priority to address them so that they're at least out of your environment, because you can talk to people in cleanses and detox all day long, but if you don't address the environment, which the majority of practitioners don't because they don't have time for it, you're just going to keep getting retoxified. So work with us. This is going to include a lot of features that you guys have never had before. The main ones that being that we're going to give you guys the Warrior Cleanse for the whole time that you're working with us. And thus in this, we're calling it a mastermind. And you're going to get 3 advanced toxic burden labs, clinical guide, lab interpretations, strategic detox education, peptides and bioregulators training, and then VIP group calls. We're giving you guys the Tuesday calls that we're going to do, or sorry, the Wednesday calls that we're going to do right after this call. So if you guys want to join us for that, it's dianekaiser.com/VIP. We're giving you the Peptides 101 bundle as well. And we're giving you lifetime access to all of the recordings and education. So we can't wait to see you guys there. If you want to join us the VIP call after this, just to ask us anything you can. But we're going to have a separate call every Thursday. We're starting on February 12th, but open enrollment ends on the 5th. So join us, you guys. That you can get the $500 discount until the 1st. You're going to see me in there. You're going to see Carrington in there, and we're going to support you for 90 minutes every week for 8 weeks. And you're going to get all the labs. We're going to teach you guys how to do them. This is the first time we're going to actually have a whole group like this where you're going to take an active role in knowing your labs and your environment and what's poisoning you. This slide is actually incorrect. It's supposed to say that it's $39.97 normally for a group led like this, but it's $500 off, and it'll be $34.97 for you to join now until February 1st.
I'm just excited. Come learn with us and be your own doctor and be your own environmental specialist and learn how to prioritize what's actually making you sick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without that, you guys can guarantee illness will be a part of your future. Mm-hmm. All right, you guys, see you on the other side. Hopefully we'll see you in the group with us to detox and learn how to be your own best detox doctor and to finally heal with research peptides and bioregulators once and for all, because that's also a confusing industry right now. But we're going to give you guys straight information on what's not going to work. If you have mast cell activation syndrome, there are certain peptides that you should not be taking because they will trigger you to even feel worse. So this is where we're going to give you guys the absolute science and truth behind what's going to work for you and when to bring in certain peptides and bioregulators. See you guys there. And also, if you're in the VIP group, we'll see you on the other side. Thanks, everybody. Bye, Carrington.